Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only, James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Now, I all know that you remember we had Shane Saunders on the show to talk about behavioral breathing science. Coincidentally, Shane's episode dropped today on Apple Podcasts and every other streaming service you can imagine. Check it out. But today, we're bringing you the other half of that powerhouse duo. Angie Saunders is the co-founder of the Online Breathing Academy and the co-producer and co-host of the soon-to-be-released Breathe Well, Live Well podcast. Before she became a world-class breathing expert, Angie spent 8 years in the Hollywood entertainment industry, working in front of the camera as a singer, dancer, actress, and even a stunt performer, but also behind the scenes in production. She knows firsthand what it means to perform under pressure. She left Hollywood and moved to Australia to join forces with Shane, and together they've spent over a decade studying with legends like Wim Hof, Dan Brule, and Dr. Peter Litchfield. But Angie brings a unique perspective, focusing on how breath can help us regulate emotions, recover efficiently, and stay grounded through life's everyday demands, from motherhood to entrepreneurship. Without further ado, Angie, my good friend, welcome to the show. Welcome from Australia, in fact.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Thank you, James. I totally appreciate being here today with you guys.
Well, listening to the introduction, I have some interesting things, I guess, to talk about today. And coming from the Hollywood world to shifting into breath work, what was the moment that you realized that breath was the key to everything, and that it was the one thing that could, as our show stands for, get people better faster?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a saying that's like, hindsight is foresight. So when I look back at my experiences that have brought me here today, it's helping me make very different and better decisions moving into the future. So it did come from a Hollywood background. I'd say the first probably major thing that happened in my life, I didn't realize it at the time that breathing was such an important factor. I realized it after I learned about behavioral breathing. But what happened to me is I wanted my whole life to be, a performer in Hollywood. And when I got there, I had a lot of amazing experiences. Being able to be on stage at the Grammys. The big one for me that actually was a turning point was when I was on the stage as one of the semifinalists for the first season of the Pussycat Dolls show. And what had happened is, it's very high pressure. But it was like, I think that actually I wanted to be on the stage, but I think in hindsight, I didn't want to be on stage. And I thought, you know what I mean? Like, when you're kind of like torn between two worlds where you think you want to be a certain thing, and then you get there and you're like, that actually, I don't want to do that anymore. I think I'd gotten to this point because when I walked out on stage to do my solo, I had the bright light, the music started. I started singing. It was great. But then I had a full-on panic attack. When I first started singing, and everything like went cloudy and fuzzy. My heart started racing. I started shaking, and I went off on my timing with the music. And then the next thing I remember was, thank you. And I was like, huh, huh. It was like, I thought this was going to be my make or break moment. And that happened. And then, from that moment on, and this was 2007, I believe. And I said to myself, actually, I realized I actually don't want to be here. I think, I want to have a family. I want to have kids. I don't feel like this is the environment I want to have it in, just following intuition. So anyway, shortly thereafter, I met Shane. And he was like, move to Australia. And I said, sure, I'll move to Australia for a year, see how we go. And I never came back. But what I found is that this anxiety, this performance anxiety, was started to become a thing for me. Where, even when I went to business networking events and I was starting a new life, starting a new business, starting something brand new. I didn't really know who I was going into my 30s. It's a huge change point when you go from being like single 20 something to married, children, business, that sort of thing. Like, it's a very difficult time for me, going through that stage. So what I found is every time I was talking to people, I was having those anxiety attacks. Or if I was, when we first started our business, we're actually presenting to a bunch of chiropractors in Victoria. And I remember right before going out on stage, I had the same sensations where I had the heart palpitations, the sweaty palms, like I just, where that fight or flight came up, and I'm like, I'm just sitting in the wings waiting to go on and speak and hear, and and I'm like, come on, I'm a breathing person. And so I intervened, and I tried a few different techniques that we teach, and was able to manage and get the symptoms under control, and then was able to go out there and speak. But I was like, this actually has to stop, because this is going to stop me from getting my message out into the world. And where we got started in breathing essentially was after having a baby, because I went through postnatal depression, and I started to become very moody, and I started to become the type of person that I never wanted to become. New country, new relationship, new life. And I was like, deer in headlights sort of thing every morning. And when we started getting, I think we had a few other exposures to breathing, but Wim Hof was the first sort of training that we did. And what I realized now, like fast forward to today, is I was actually walking around stress breathing all the time. And what that means is I was constantly throwing off my body chemistry every day, which meant that I was always on edge. I was always stressed out. I was always I was having personality changes, so becoming moody, not like the happy-go-lucky person I knew myself to be. And when we got into behavioral breathing, I started tracking when I got triggered, how I could make those changes, and how I can allow regulation to happen throughout the day. And that's like when everything opened for me. It was like, okay, I can actually enjoy life again and not have to be overwhelmed by stress, just thinking it's an everyday part of life.
Wow. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, it opens me up, because Jason, Dr. Jason does public speaking, and he speaks to a lot of groups all over the place, and I do as well. I was just talking to you in the green room about how I'm going to be over speaking in Australia and Singapore, a couple cool places I've never been to before. But you performing on that stage and queued up to give your presentation or your song, and I think that people just in general have a huge, massive like reservation from being on public stage. So I think that it wasn't in your wrong interest to arrive and then want to leave. I think it was very much in your like natural state to say, I want to go do something else because this doesn't feel right, because most people don't feel right in that atmosphere, in that position. And most of the time we aren't doing it for us, we're doing it for other people. And that's a big clarity moment for you to find out that where you were and what you were doing wasn't feeling authentic to you. And when it's not authentic to you, it's not going to be something that we actually admire about ourselves. So we're not going to thrive in that zone. And that's not our zone of genius. So it's cool that you're able to recognize that, pivot wholly, and go into a whole nother direction, new path, find new identity, and, clear up some of the confusion with the personality traits that you started to adapt into, clear that up, and now help other people liberate through your own struggle. And I think that those are the best people to learn from, is the ones that struggle the most and that find their position and where they can actually make an impact on other people's lives through their struggle, because they can recognize those similar things in other people and really be a catalyst and an advocate for them to break through to basically finding their genius again and finding out what they aren't supposed to be doing. And maybe that is a good moment for people to say, you know what, that thing that I'm actually doing kind of sucks now, and I don't want to do that anymore. So, I just wanted to make that like positional statement of where you came to your own reality and how you are today and what you're actually thriving in today and how you're working with somebody you love, By the way, Dr. Jason said Shane Saunders, her other half's podcast dropped today, so go check it out on iTunes and Spotify. And I just think it's very timely also because, I think it's very buzzy in this world that people are all talking about breath work and people are all talking about self-regulation and things of these things of, performance, not just, being a good mom and being a good, partner, but performance. Like athletes are talking about breathing and high level speakers are talking about breathing. And it's a very buzzy thing at the moment, but I'm going to pass over to Dr. Jason because I know he's going to take this a little bit further than I could.
Boy, that's that. I'm going to do my best, right? I love that. Thanks for sharing all that. What I was going to make a joke actually and say, luckily today's world isn't stressful at all anymore, so we don't even need to implement, breathing techniques to ground ourselves. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. By the time the show airs in May, everything's going to be worked out in the world, so we'll be good. No, but for real, I really relate, Angie, because and I don't share this a whole lot, but for a brief moment in my life, I was in the film industry as well. And I was the medical director for Storybench Studios. We put out a lot of, how there's like A-list movies and B-list movies.
Yep.
We were like D-list movies. I mean that out of love. I worked with some really great people, amazing actors. And it wasn't the act. It wasn't any of that. It's just the shows they didn't have momentum. They didn't have traction. There's probably, it's a grueling industry. And that's what I was going to say is that it's fast paced, it's intense, it's high energy, it's do it all right. You got one shot sometimes to do it. And I remember this is way before I ever met, I'm going to get into how I met you guys. This is way before I met you guys. And I was on the set, medical director. I had a like a EMS team, emergency medical services team that was there. And we had a little med tent and the production, it was like, I swear, I don't know how many people were on our production team, but it seemed like, I don't know, a couple hundred people. I'm sure it wasn't, but there was a lot of moving pieces in these movies. And I remember one day, just to kind of give you guys like the level of intensity and then the expectations of performance. There was a scene where one of the actors was basically going to get in a fist fight, and it was a staged, obviously a stage fight. But the actor dislocated his shoulder in the middle of the scene and was in a lot of obviously pain, like a lot of pain. And anyway, it came to me right away on the walkie, on the two-way. And it really was the only real emergency that I had in the year that I was working for the company. But I sprinted. I mean, I'm like, I've got this, and I sprinted across the set. It was outdoor location this particular day. I sprinted across. I got there. It was a posterior dislocation of the shoulder, which is really, really bad for people listening. Most shoulders dislocate anteriorly or to the front. This was a really bad dislocation. And he's like, what can you do? Can you set it? And I walked him through it and I'm like, listen, yes, it can be set, but what we really need to do is go to the hospital and there's this procedure and, blah, 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 let's just move you. And he's like, no, man, you can do it. And I explained the blood vessels and the pinching and I went over all of my due diligence, but he's like, just set it. I'm in a lot of pain. So I did what I, knew to do. And I won't explain the technique, but long story short, I reset that shoulder. And it was horrible. And he was in horrible pain. And I mean, this is a big guy in the fight scene and he's crying and he's in pain. And it was an awful situation. And I said, we got a break on the set, whatever. And I kid you not, the director said, are you still good to go to the actor? Because the very next part of that scene they were filming was this guy was supposed to be crying and upset and hurt. And they kept going. They actually recorded the next little piece of the scene. But this guy was in so much pain. I can't imagine what it was. Anyway, I felt like I did a good job. I went back to my medic tent. And the next morning I got called into production. And, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be like, good job, Dr. Jason. You did great on the set there. No. Performance. No. I did fine with what I did, but I got scolded for running across the set. That when I run, it implies that there is a really bad emergency and that I need to walk and maintain composure. And people, are looking to me for the way they like, what's the tenor of the set? And basically, I had created a bunch of hoopla by sprinting across the set to help this person. And that's when I was like, oh shit, not only do I have to know all my stuff, but I have to perform like this presence for I don't know, whatever that is. But anyway, long story short, it really sat with me, not in a great way. I think it was the last movie. I think it was the last movie that I did with the company. Great. I don't want to badmouth the company. Everybody worked super, super hard. I don't want to badmouth the production people or anything like that. But it was a learning experience for me that in that Hollywood setting, there's a lot of pressure on everyone, including the way you're acting, not just on camera, but around your fellow people that are, on the production team. So it was super strange and super weird. I didn't have any breathing techniques to myself. Fast forward a number of years, and I meet you guys down in Austin, Bee Cave, Texas, in that area. And I didn't know crap about breathing techniques other than, which we're going to get into, take a big breath, take a big breath. We're going to get into this. And Shane's there, and it's being led by our friend, Alex Sharfin. And there's this optional early morning, like, breathing circle that's going to happen. Right. And I didn't know anything about that. And I went in there, and you and Shane led this breathing circle. And if you ask me, like, what technique did you use? I don't know. Because it was brand new to me, but I laid there, and I was I don't know how to say this to our listeners, but I have a long history of anxiety. I have a long history of, I quote, my spidey sense being activated all the time. And it was the first moment that my spidey sense was not activated. I actually felt peace and peaceful in my body for the first time in my many decades on the planet. I mean, I'm talking from as far back in my childhood as I can remember. And that's when I was like, Shane and Angie know something. And it's when I became a lifelong fan of you guys, and have, loved and appreciated you guys ever since. So, and I appreciate that. Thank you for letting everybody share my story. I got a little long-winded there. But where I wanted to go is, I think a lot of people think, we always say, when people are upset, like, hey, take a breath. And I've heard that taking a deep breath may not be the most advantageous in some situations. Can you walk us through why taking a breath, or that big breath, might not be the right thing to do?
Yeah. Well, we talk about, first of all, that story. That's amazing
crazy.
and so on point.
Yeah.
Point. And with breathing techniques and breath work in general, especially with how popular breath work is right now, like it's like the thing, right? But people are using it as a one size fits all sort of experience, or they're saying, come to a breathwork session and have a transformational experience as such. But what we found is breathwork backfires for some people, right? And let's take the example of take a big breath. Depends on who you're talking to. Somebody might just want to punch you in the face for saying that. If you're in a heated argument with your partner and they're like, just take a deep breath and calm down. And you're like, oh yeah.
Nothing calms a partner down like telling them to calm down. That's what I've experienced in my life.
Right. And it goes similar with breathing techniques in general. Let's move into the science of respiration now, and what actual intentional deep breath does rather than an organic deep breath, because that's very different. If you do an intentional deep breath and you're already stressed out, you may be exacerbating your stress. So what's happening, big breath causes you to blow off more CO2. And I'm sure Shane would have gone into this, but I might just bring it back up again for a reminder, is that oxygen is important, absolutely. But what's more important is carbon dioxide, CO2.
Yeah.
Because you can have an abundance of oxygen in your body, and it is not going to go where it needs to go, like into the muscles and the tissues and the organs, without an appropriate right amount of CO2. So generally, if you're stressed out already, what you're doing is you're lowering CO2. See, what happens is body chemistry goes off first, and then the breath starts to follow to try to regulate. So if your body chemistry is off and somebody says take a deep breath, you're going to throw your body chemistry off even more. Meaning if your body chemistry is off, generally it's CO2 levels dropping. So if you take a deep breath, you're going to drop those CO2 levels even more. And that's where people start to hyperventilate because they think that they have to take more breaths to get more oxygen in when it's actually doing the complete opposite. Now, some people might benefit from taking an intentional big sigh, but some people will not. And that's where it's subjective. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I think it was Shane that originally I was having a conversation with him where, because in my head and in my medical training, it's about oxygen. I mean, we're measuring oxygen all day long. It's what we measure. You have a little monitor. You can buy one on Amazon, probably like $5. Pop it on your finger. It'll tell your oxygen levels. But the reality is just what you said, that if we're not getting that oxygen into the tissues, into our organs, they're not going to work. And what drives, if I'm understanding it correctly, because this literally is probably taught, honestly, it's probably taught in medical education, but it's not really emphasized. The oxygen is emphasized, right? So if there's not a good amount of CO2 for pressure, right? Carbon dioxide pressure, it's not going to move that oxygen into the tissues, into the cells, into the organs so that they can benefit from the oxygen there. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. And we actually have a capnometer, an educational use capnometer, where we measure CO2 so we can see. And, healthy levels of CO2, if anybody's ever done work with capnometry, especially those in, anesthesiology, where you need to have between 35 and 45 every day millimeters mercury of CO2. So if you don't have that, your body chemistry is going to be off. And if your body chemistry is off, it says red alarm bells to the mind. And then guess what? We make meaning of that. Right. So, if you, and it's so, I'm going to bring this back to the anxiety piece because it's so important. Like lots of people, I still experience anxiety from time to time. But the thing is when anxiety comes up, it can be lots of different things. It could be the mind creating anxiety. It could be the environment outside of you creating it. It could be the environment inside of you creating it. So it can come from anywhere, and it could be a mix of all of them generally. And then where a loop comes into play, like repeating patterns, is that when you're triggered and then you have these sensations in your body when CO2 drops. And generally it might be, tension, it might be dizziness, it might be heart palpitations, it might be sweaty palms, it might be, whatever it is for you that comes up when it happens, is that when it starts to drop, that's where you can then start going, okay, well, physiology is off. Now I can start to go, okay, well, what can I do now? And generally that's where people integrate techniques. But breathing techniques, everybody's talking about breathing techniques and everybody's doing breathing techniques. And it's actually becoming a Band-Aid, and it's not solving the problem. It's a coping mechanism, and it's not getting to the root cause. So where we're teaching is that the body has a natural breathing reflex where the breathing reflex is driven by the brainstem, and the brainstem is what balances out body chemistry. But what happens is when we start getting so stressed out, we want to take control of it, and we want to, and that actually throws it off even more. So the thing that we want to get to is, like, instead of saying take a breath, you want to get to the point where you say, okay, just relax the breath. It's a very different paradigm shift. And when you relax the breath, sometimes it wants to go a little bit rogue, but that's actually the body balancing itself out. It knows what it needs to do. It's just when we get in the way, it causes problems.
Oh boy. I got to quote it, James. You already know what I'm going to say. It's when we get in the way that it causes the problems. In chiropractic philosophy, one of my doctorate degrees in chiropractic, and I learned more, honestly, from that than anything else I've ever done, especially philosophically. They talk about three intelligences: the universal intelligence, which I think some people would call God or the universe, the innate intelligence, which is that universal intelligence inside all of us and all things, and then the educated intelligence, which is what we learn along the way and try to implement. And it's often the educated that gets in the way of the other two. I love that you said that so naturally. And James, I'll pass it right over to you. But I do want to say we mentioned Alex Sharfin. Oddly enough, he's joining us live right now and says hello. Good to see us all together here. Yeah,
Good
so
to
thanks,
see you,
Alex,
Alex.
for joining us today.
Listening to what you're talking about, it's real life implementations. Like I was saying earlier, it's performance. It's elite athletes that are doing breathing exercises to have better performance. And it's people, like you were saying off camera, like you're a mom. And sleep is sometimes one of the most challenging things in the world for high level performers to actually get down to business and actually get the time that they need for cellular repair. How do you, I know, because this is going to hit a lot of people where they need it. How do you implement breathing techniques or strategies or whatever we want to like label it as? How do you give advice to somebody that's really struggling with sleep? Because I know that it's affecting a lot of people. It's not just high level athletic performance that I'm interested in, and like job performance, and like Jason was the EMT. Like, how do you give the recommendations to somebody that's really not sleeping well, and not just because it's the animals or the kids, but the person, like the individual? What are some takeaways that people can say, damn, I'm going to sleep better tonight because I listened to the Get Better Faster podcast?
Well, and that, I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes the amount of sleep is not as important as the quality of sleep that you get as well. And I'll probably teach by telling the story of how I'm a go kind of a person. When I first started learning about this breathing reflex and letting go of trying to control the breath, that in it of itself created anxiety within me, because I'm a controlling kind of a person, because I'm always trying to make things happen. Performance athletes will generally fall into the same category. They're always trying to do something to get the outcome. And the hardest thing about balanced body chemistry is you have to stop doing to get a good outcome. And a lot of the times, a lot of us humans will not know rest outside of sleep. So recovery is hard. There are some people, if you say, okay, calm down and relax and recovery, they go, I am not interested in that. I have so many other things that I need to do, especially moms, I'd say. But it's everybody. I mean, maybe that's just because I'm a mom. So what I had to find out is, first of all, it was exploring breathing techniques. I mean, I used to do the Wim Hof method every single morning and every single night, and that helped for a while. But the problem is I was still doing a technique. And that technique over time actually stopped giving me results. Like it became just a thing that I did, but it wasn't doing the thing that it used to do when I first started. And that's kind of what happens. Like Jason, like you said, Dr. Jason, about the body is a learning system. So it learns what you do and it becomes habituated to certain levels of CO2. So as a goer, you are habituated to lower levels of CO2, which means you're just used to it. And it's just normal, which means tension might be normal, stress might be normal, and it's just like you live with it. But to answer your question about sleep, it's to transition from technique to not doing a technique would start off with a triangle, because our natural breathing rhythm is an inhale and it's an exhale and it's a brief pause. So if you can start with that visualization of in and out through the nose very gently, not very big at all, in through the nose, out through the mouth, allowing a pause and only taking the next breath when the body's ready to, it becomes a meditation. And you kind of go into this meditative state of just following that triangle and allowing the bounce of the inhale and the exhale and the whatever slight pause. But the difference is going into controlling the triangle and not controlling the triangle. You want to get to the point where you just let go and let the body do the triangle, and then let the breaths get smaller and smaller. Some people might experience a lot of air hunger because they're not used to rising levels of CO2. And as as the levels are rising, you're becoming you'll find your body will get warmer when you do this. And you're finding that it's actually, you're opening up the capillaries because oxygen is actually going into the tissues.
Well, it transitions me to think about another really, I think, more of a modern approach that people are dealing with. And that's they're using machine breathing, like CPAP machines.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Can you talk to me about how that's really down regulating people's ability to sleep and how it might affect their breathing long term by having this type of contraption strapped to their noggin?
Yeah. Look, it's a very complex issue. And I'm not a medical doctor. I can just share what my research has shown. And CPAP is good for symptoms. It's treating the symptoms, but not treating the cause.
Mm.
And an example is when we did have somebody join our breathing studio. We have a weekly breathing studio that we do, and within a week, he wasn't on a CPAP yet, but within a week, his apnea stopped.
Wow.
And it was in his case. I mean, he wasn't overweight. He didn't have the structural issues. It was a habitual thing. So by working with his breathing consciously during the day and exercising the muscles of the respiratory system, but also allowing the reflexive breathing, allowing higher levels of CO2 we work with the breathing consciously. When you go into unconscious sleep, the body remembers. It's learning a new system during the day and taking it into the night. So when he went to go to sleep at night, he was starting to breathe differently because he was breathing differently during the daytime. So that's a minor case. But essentially, if I were to go, what's a blanket sort of a focus? Like if I were somebody that was on a CPAP, I would go, okay, first of all, I go, what's a structural thing that I need to look for, right? Generally, it might be heavy weight, excess weight, or, inflammation, whatnot, whatever it is. But then going into the point, okay, well, is it an actual structural thing or is it a habitual thing? And if it's a habit, if it's a behavior, you can work on it with just being, aware of your breathing during the day. Most people who have apnea at night have apnea during the day. It's like, we call it email apnea. You're sitting at your computer, you're in hunting mode. So you go into holding your breath, generally after hyperventilating because the body's trying to increase CO2. So it's like, if you just start paying attention to what your breathing habits are during the day, sometimes that's enough to make a big enough change to experience a difference.
Yeah, that's really it's good feedback because I'm talking to you about stuff that people are just actually dealing with. It's not because they want to enlighten their lives. It's because their life kind of sucks and they're really dealing with stuff and nobody's giving them answers. So that's why I'm going on this pathway with you and asking you the questions that I am, because I think that there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and be like, damn, that makes a lot of sense. I need to change my behavior as the lights are on before I turn the lights off.
Yes.
And if I can turn the lights off and go into a situation where life is improving, now this podcast was invaluable to that person. So I'm really trying to pull good information out that our end user is going to say, that was the best thing that I've heard in the past 20 years of my life, because that made sense to me. Somebody that could actually vocalize that to me. And damn it, I hate strapping this dumb thing on my face and it doesn't feel good. My partner hates it. And just all the ramifications, the downstream effects of something like that, what it does to the personal satisfaction of life quotient, I think it just diminishes it greatly. So I think what you're sharing with is huge. And the takeaways that people are going to get from this are going to be quite helpful. And I'm going to pass over to Dr. Jason, but I have another follow-up with that after Jason jumps in.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut off your stream of consciousness.
Well, the next thing is snoring is breathing. And I'm tackling the sleep issue because I know that there's people out there that, they're miserable because they don't know how to sleep right. And it's causing disruption to their cellular repair. They're not going into the deep REM cycles. And once again, it's disturbing other people in their life. Have you seen people that have come through your programs that have like chronic snoring issues that start to improve with the strategies that you and Shane teach?
Yes, I have. And I think the thing is that like breathing is also not a panacea, right? So it's just one part of it, a very important part of it that is for sure and quite often the missing link. But if you've got inflammation and weak respiratory muscles, you're probably going to have a snoring problem, and if you don't look after the organism, that could come up. So it is subjective as well. Each person will have their own journey to go through on this. But I would, if you have a look at going, okay, let's work. Everything centers around the breathing reflex, allowing it to do its job. That's it. Like everything that we teach supports the breathing reflex. If the breathing reflex can't do its job, it might have too much tension around it, which means people might be breathing in a way that's not anatomically correct, which means they could be like a reverse breather where they inhale and their belly goes in instead of inhale and belly go out. Right. They could be breathing with their ancillary muscles, we're lifting their shoulders and causing a lot of tension in the neck and jaw, having TMJ. I used to have TMJ issues, waking up with really tense muscles. And I actually had to do a lot of movement and myofascial release and habit change before going to sleep, before that started to go away. And this was the only thing that had my TMJ go away, is just myofascial release, changing my breathing, relaxing all the muscles, allowing the breathing reflex to do its job, not making judgment about what it's doing, but just trusting the breathing reflex, not trying to do anything. And that helped that. So for snoring, you probably, an individual would probably have to go through a few different processes to do process of elimination. Try this, try that, try this. A lot of people do sleep with mouth tape. Mouth tape is okay. I think it's a Band-Aid. Because during the day, if you're a mouth breather, you're going to be mouth breathing at night. Again, it's a habit thing. So take care of the habits, or be aware of the habits when the lights are on, and it'll help when the lights go out. It's probably good to help with a habit change at night to do breathing tape, but you don't want to tape your mouth every single night before you go to sleep for the rest of your life. You want to change a habit.
Yeah, I think, these are just really fundamental things. The last follow up to what you mentioned there is somebody wants to strengthen their respiratory muscles. How does somebody, I'm clueless. How do you do that?
Yeah. So no, this is good. I'm very glad that you brought that up. So, a lot of us, we live a sedentary lifestyle. Where we sit in front of the computer, or you go to an office job, or these sorts of things. And especially when you start getting into your 40s and 50s, it seems to be the case that a lot of people forget how powerful exercise is. And we think that I don't have time to exercise because I have all the other things to do. And so therefore we start to live a sedentary life. And what happens is that if you don't get out there and breathe heavily in an exercise or workout, then your ribs will actually kind of start to get tense, right? So if you go the intercostals, the muscles between the ribs, they'll become really stiff. They won't become malleable, especially after 25. They start becoming rigid if you don't bring active movement to it. So if you've got rigid ribs, do you think it's going to be easy to take a deep breath? It's going to be really hard for that diaphragm to descend. And it probably might cause some gut issues as well, because the diaphragm cannot descend low enough to massage the stomach and all the organs to get the vital organs to do what it does best. So if everything is locked up, it's going to have some downstream issues, and it again depends on whatever you're predisposed to. But, that's why it's important to create movement. And we talk about different movements, front to back, side to side. The rotation is also really important. Rotation exercises are really important. The myofascial tissue, if it will become rigid, and everybody will become stiff. and hard to move. And that's when you can't, 70 years old and you have a hard time getting out of a chair. It's a problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of good information there. I think there's so many people that are going to walk away from this and understand that sedentary lifestyle is the cornerstone to early death and lacking quality of life. And you got to make time to move the body. Movement is life. And I think that there's a lot of great takeaways that you're sharing with us today and our audience about just the simple things that nobody really has the knowledge skill to talk about. And I think that's one of the things that really brings this show to a different level is bringing on guests like yourself and Shane to talk about topics that are, like I said in the beginning of today's show, very buzzy, but very complex when it comes to like understanding real life solutions to real life issues. And it's not just sitting in some drum circle and doing breathing. It's actually like, how can I have better performance for, sleeping? How can I have, and that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing in this world. And most people just gloss it over and they take an Ambien, or they'll gloss it over and they'll take a melatonin, or they'll gloss it over and they'll drink 3 glasses of wine, and they'll just gloss it over as whatever it is. But like you said, the mouth tape is just as bad as somebody having 3 glasses of wine. And it's like, what are we doing to self-medicate to get us better quality of sleep? And I can guarantee you the people that are doing those types of things, they aren't getting actually real good restorative sleep. And they're probably still dealing with the CPAP and whatever the downstream effect of still snoring and not having the quality of life that they actually want and their family and partners want for them too. Because usually these things aren't just a one directional thing. It's multifaceted that's actually having an impact on other people's quality of life too. So I just think that it's a timely thing, and it's important to have somebody like yourself really explain it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that whole conversation too. It's interesting. Well, I think it's interesting. I used to snore a lot. Like I don't know why I snored. Maybe I was more overweight. I don't know. But it was bad enough that my kids make fun of me, and Rachel, would like regularly like elbow me a little bit in the bed and like, have me turn over or whatever, whatever that happens to be. It just kind of, strangle me. It just, I don't want to say it just kind of worked itself out, because I don't think it was that innocent. I haven't put it all together until I'm kind of putting it together this moment. I probably implemented a lot of different, breathing training, respiratory muscle training, and probably got more fit and changed my diet and drank more water and electrolytes and, worked on nervous system regulation and a whole bunch of stuff that probably fed into not snoring anymore, or at least not like I used to. But I do want to just comment. Thank you for bringing CPAPs back up, James. I just wanted to comment as a medical provider. Everybody that I know of that goes in for a sleep test, everybody's going in for, or now they have these at-home tests. Everybody tests positive for a sleep disorder and probably apnea. Like, it's like, I mean, people will say things, and I'm a specialist. I'm a functional medicine specialist. And I primarily work with, women, of a certain age that have autoimmunities and chronic illnesses and, all that kind of stuff. Right. But when they say things like, my general practitioner is ordering this sleep study, and I'm like, oh, you're going to test positive for apnea. And they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, because everybody does. Everybody does. So first of all, when a test basically has everybody testing positive for it, I mean, that's not the way things are supposed to work. The second thing is, out of my clients, and this took me a while, it took me years to understand this. And I feel dense now that I'm in retrospect, hindsight is 2020, right? Everybody that's on a CPAP, we wind up with other problems primarily. And I do laboratory testing. That's my, God gifted me with like three things that I do well. And what, maybe 2. And one of them is pattern analysis with labs, and understand, like, just going in like for the kill with labs and understanding what the heck is going on with that person at a very root fundamental level. Every single person that I test that's on a CPAP has a mold infection, All of them.
Mm.
Everybody does a mycotoxin infection. And there's various ways to test that, but I'm saying not everybody I test for mycotoxins, I want to say it again, mold toxins, comes out positive, but everybody that's on a CPAP comes back positive, every single one. So then we started talking about the way the CPAP works. And, a lot of them have, basically water built into it so that you don't get dried out, right? They have this circulating water. I'm like, no, and there's filters and I clean the tubes and I do all this stuff and I follow all the rules. Doesn't matter. They're still getting mold toxins. I can't help that you're doing everything quote right with the machine. It's still a problem.
Gross. It's just gross.
It's just gross, right? So then people get smart and they're like, well, I have a machine that I can turn off the hydration, whatever, the humidity, there we go, or whatever I don't know what the setting is called, right? That they can turn that off. And then what happens is they have this dry air blowing in their mouth the whole time. And then they get thrush. They get like an oral thrush. So like an oral candida, because thrush, candida thrives in a dry environment like that. So, I mean, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you're having forced air, that's irregular breathing anyway. There's got to be other solutions. So, one of my goals, as soon as I find out that one of my private clients is on a CPAP, I'm like, come hell or high water, we're going to get you off that CPAP because it's ridiculous. It's causing more problems than it's solving. Okay, that was my soliloquy about CPAPs. I don't like them. I think there's other solutions. And coming back to what you were saying, and this was my note, I wrote, conscious breathing during the day is training our bodies how to breathe at night. That was kind of my take home. And there's various ways to go about that. But, when we practice something, our bodies learn it. We learn, what's it called? Muscle memory, and don't forget that our respiratory muscles are involuntary muscles. I mean, it's kind of like our heart. Our heart is a muscle. It beats by itself. Our respiratory muscles, they move by themselves in a bucket handle and this way and in rotation and the whole thing. And if we can train those muscles to work the right way, we're going to breathe more effectively. And that new muscle memory will be integrated. It only makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense unless you think about it. And then, and I want to quote James here. He always says this brilliant thing. If you knew what we know, you'd do what we do, and I feel like this is one of those moments where it's like, you'd be, not you, but people, myself included, would be doing these breathing training exercises regularly so that we can learn that muscle memory and breathe better. And I love that idea. Now, all of that said, I want to go back to something that we brought up, and it's all the way back to CO2 and signaling the brain. We didn't say the words, but we're going to talk about a fight or flight method here, or fight or flight response. So a stress response. But I was thinking about something that you said, Angie, where you said everything we do sets up around the breathing reflex. And it really hit me that, we always hear this thing that says something like, hey, you can go a month without food, but you can only go a few days without water. And I'm like, you can only do a few minutes without breathing. I mean, you're going to die real fast you're going to be unalived super fast if you don't breathe, and I will couple that with, if you're not correctly is a big word here, but if you're not breathing in a healthy way, there we go. I took the judgment out. If you're not breathing in a healthy way, you're not going to be as vital or live as well. You might live, but maybe not as well. Right. So I want to go back to this breathing, and I think you mentioned something like we're sitting at our emails, we're sitting at our screens, and we're stress breathing. Can you walk me through what does stress breathing look like?
Stress breathing means you're controlling your breathing, essentially. So if you think about it, if you're frustrated, how do you breathe? And it's different for everyone, but just think about it. Like right now, how do you breathe stressed? I personally brace my abdominal muscles and I push my exhale out because I'm frustrated. And what that's doing is I'm controlling my breathing. I'm not allowing the breath to move freely. And so that causes the body chemistry to go off. You can go, that's why, people just feel off and they don't know why. It's generally because of that. Right. And it's the same thing going into a GP, your doctor's office, and they're like, "Oh, you're just stressed. Go and take some yoga." That's generally
That's
the
not what the
case.
GPs say in America. That's an Australian GP. We say go take a pill, and how many do you want? So,
Yeah,
sorry.
Xanax or something like that,
Yeah, there we
right?
go.
For
Now we're talking
anxiety.
American medicine. Let's
Yeah,
go.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. I remember. It's been a hot minute, but I remember.
Go take some
Um,
yoga, my ass.
or that might just be what
They'd be
people think
fired.
right,
Go
right?
take some yoga.
Well, that's what people will tend to go to. They'll go to yoga, which is another form of control,
Sure.
So there, a lot of
Wow.
people are reaching out to wellness techniques that are actually not helping them too. But it's something as simple as allowing the breath. It's like, wait a minute, this is too easy. Don't I have to do something to get better? And I'm saying, no, you have to stop doing something to get
Mm.
better.
I think it's interesting because when I think about, I think for me, stress is very subconscious. I mean, sometimes I become aware of it. And now that I don't have my spidey sense firing all the time, when it fires, I can feel it. And I'm like, oh, something's off right now. But sometimes there's it's not that intense. And I realize that I'm doing the things that you mentioned where I maybe am doing some shallow breathing. Like I'm not doing like a full diaphragmatic, breathe. Not that my body's not moving. Like those ribs aren't moving. They're really stuck. And I'm doing some shallow breathing, and then I will hold my breath. I will unconsciously hold my breath, and that's when I actually have some weird thing in my brain where I'm like, oh my god, I'm holding my breath. Like I don't even realize that I've been doing it, nor do I know how long I've been doing it. And it's just really it's really interesting to me because I think that you're right. It comes after this shallow breathing that's probably hyperventilating to a certain extent, and then my body kicks in reactively to say you need to hold your breath now and get the CO2 up so that you're not hyperventilating anymore. I don't even realize I'm doing that. I think it's super interesting. But what I also think is interesting is that when our CO2 levels, and again, let's go back. I know we said it, but I'll just bring it up again. Oxygen is important, but it's more important to get that oxygen into the tissues, into the organs, into the cells, so that we can have mitochondrial respiration and create energy and all the chemistry that we need to create and all that kind of jazz, right? If we don't have the CO2 pressure, we're not going to drive the oxygen into the cells so that it can do its job. And I'm still tripping out on this point. When CO2 is low, you said it sends danger signals to the brain, and danger signals to the brain cause a release of stress chemistry, catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, metanephrines, cortisols. I mean, all that kind of stuff. And then it depends on who the person is, but I mean, fight, flight, freeze. I mean, and it literally can just be that breath or I don't know, the disorganized breath, the distressed breath. I don't know that I'm tripping over words right now. But the breath that's not working for your body can literally send you. So here's my question. First of all, did I nail that down?
Yes,
Okay.
that was very good.
Okay. Second thing, it seems like in that fight, flight, freeze, stress situation, then if a lack of breathing in the right way, I don't like that word. That's so loaded. But if we have low CO2, low carbon dioxide.
Optimal breathing.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you. So we have suboptimal breathing going on. It seems like if suboptimal breathing can trigger a fight, flight, freeze, it seems like optimum breathing could actually pull you out of the fight, flight, freeze, because it could be telling your brain, no, look, not only do you have enough oxygen, but we've got CO2 pressure. You're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger right now. It might be a situational stressful event, but you're safe. Am I interpreting that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
yeah, you're spot on with that. So think of it like the body chemistry goes out, the breathing reacts to balance you. What you just said is regulation to a T on a respiratory chemistry level. So stress happens every single day in many different ways, but how you handle it matters.
Mm.
So if there is a storm around you and you are well regulated, you are going to be the one to be able to help everyone around you, right? So this is where leaders come into play, because they have a well-regulated system, and one person who has a well-regulated nervous system helps other people to have a well-regulated nervous system. And it comes from this piece of allowing optimal respiration.
I want to pass it over to James. James, I saw your hand go up, but I do want to say, as far as being around other people that, help you regulate, I call it co-regulation. I don't think I don't want that to be confused with codependency, but like a co-regulation. I mean, if somebody is calm, if someone does have some peace and perspective, I mean, it's sometimes good to be around them, and I'll just give a quick shout out again to Alex Sharfin, that he has this brilliant brotherhood group that he's starting for men. I don't know. And it's just nice to be around other men and chat about that. Men don't have a lot of opportunity to be around each other that much. So again, since I see his name on my screen, I'm just going to give a shout out for that as well. Co-regulating and figuring that all out. But James, I'm pass it right over to you, my friend.
I have like 3 tiers of like interaction with you, Angie. First thing, I'm going to put it all into your court. Who's your ideal client?
I would say health and wellness professionals or enthusiasts that are interested in breathing and breath work, and they want to be able to integrate it in what they're already doing with their people, with their clients, or with their communities, or with their family, or even just for themselves.
Really straightforward. So if you guys are out there and you're looking how to expand your offerings to your client base, reach out to Angie and figure out how to integrate what she does with what you guys have already set up the process that you're actually working in already. So this is like an add-on. This is like something that you can do alongside of your practice already to help more people get better faster. Another machine style system that I'm really curious about. I don't think it's as gross as the CPAP, and it might be a little bit more on the other end of the spectrum. What is your take on hyperbaric chambers?
Oh, yeah. Very good question. Well, hyperbaric chambers is partial pressure. It's pressure. It basically helps the oxygen to, be shunted into where it needs to go. So you can pay for that, or you can learn how to do that in your every breath.
Yeah, I just think that, we're talking about the far ends of the spectrum, machine breathing. Well, this is another style that was probably a little bit clearer and cleaner and healthier for people to regulate their breathing systems and breathing styles. So I was just interested about both of those. And then I like to hike big mountains. So I'm training this entire year to go do Kilimanjaro next January of 27. Give me some advice. What should I do to prep myself for a big, different range and altitude? Because I live in Colorado, and the highest I can go to out here is 14,000 feet. And that's not like meters, it's over there in Australia, but it's pretty high for the Rocky Mountain range. But Kilimanjaro goes another 10,000 above that. So what are some things I should take in consideration on these high altitude lifestyle things I do?
Well, Shane is very versed in altitude training, and from what I know in behavioral science and respiratory science, I'll see if I can put the two together for you. So essentially, you're playing with different levels of CO2. You've got to be comfortable with different levels of CO2, right? So if you, it's like breath holding. When you hold your breath and CO2 rises, that's where air hunger comes from. So that air hunger, that need to breathe, as the CO2 rises, feeling comfortable. See, there's like a pain threshold that happens as you hold your breath and the CO2 levels rise. The body starts making these alarm systems going, take the next breath because the CO2 levels are rising and you're going to die if you don't take the next breath. So if you can just slowly get comfortable with higher levels of CO2, that will probably be helpful. It's just playing with the different levels of CO2.
So what you're saying is I should reach out to Shane about how I train for the next year
Yep.
to make
He
sure that
actually helped somebody. He actually did just train somebody to help go up to up Kilimanjaro for that same
cool,
reason. So
cool.
yeah, and it was um the person didn't make it the first 2 times, worked with Shane and made it the 3rd time. So there's some aspects of breath training for that. It's not only just the CO2 levels, right? There is the respiratory training. There is also the allowing the reflex. And if there's a lot of control around the reflex, there might be some movement training that has to happen around it, some myofascial tissue release around the diaphragm and breathing muscles. So there'd be a couple of different ways about going through this, because there's mechanical and then there's behavioral, right? So if you can work on the mechanics but also manage the behavioral aspect, which is the meaning that you make of the different CO2 levels, that also is a part of the training.
Well, I think that that's really important for anybody out there that's thinking about the different ways to implement technique and strategy. Not only from those that want to sleep and those want to um, improve over time, but I guess before I pass it back to Jason, is how long does it actually take to
Mm.
change somebody's breathing patterns on a timeline, like return on effort? Like when do you see somebody's
Well,
return on effort for implementing new strategies actually start to change their course of life?
yeah. Well, that depends. And I say that depends. Look, by changing to reflexive breathing or changing to a more optimal way of breathing,
Mm.
you'll notice CO2 levels rise and you will already feel a difference immediately. Means your body becomes warm, your muscles become relaxed. Your heart rate begins to balance out and maybe HRV rises. So there is some immediate effects that can happen from working from this. Now, the long-term effects depends on how bad you are when you first get started, right? I'll tell you a story about for me. It took me about a month to change my training, right? I went from practicing Wim Hof method or circular breathing all the time. What This is where breathwork backfires. I was practicing breathwork all the time, which means every morning, every evening, sometimes in the middle of the day when I was stressed out. And my breathing technique was circular. And my breathing technique that helped me lowering my CO2. But the benefit is that it was helping to make me foggy, which was helping me to forget about my stress.
Mm.
So I was actually shutting down the prefrontal cortex a little bit, just dealing with my stress. So instead of reaching for, alcohol or something like that, I was reaching for the circular breathing. And that whilst that helped me manage stress,
Mm.
it caused another stress in my system. I was no longer lashing out to my family members, but boy, I was holding it inside my body. And that was
Mm.
also not good. So I had to change my breathing technique from rapid circular to relaxed triangles
Mm.
and getting comfortable with pausing longer and longer and longer.
Mm.
And that was so hard, especially as somebody who's a go, go, go kind of a person. To stop and pause was uncomfortable. So to be able to, and so once I practiced that, I was rehabituating to higher levels of CO2. And do you know what I had to do? I had to deal with the stress, which actually made it go away because I was actually confronting it rather than trying to disassociate from it.
I think that's truly an amazing, anecdote, I guess, for a better word. That I think that I'm still just really caught up in this idea that there's these techniques that are out there and they're almost like hacks. I don't know how else to say that. I for a little while was really buying into the word biohacking, and now I don't want to biohack. I want to bioregulate or bio. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the word is that I want, but I don't want hacking. I don't want
You
breathing
want to
hack.
bioharmonize.
Yeah, there we
Yeah,
go.
you
Bioharmonize.
don't
I love it.
have to hack if there ain't nothing wrong.
Right, right, exactly. And I think that these techniques, and again, I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and there's probably different strokes for different folks, so to speak. But probably doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yes,
and,
yes.
and again, it kind of starts with an awareness, like, oh, there's an awareness that I can do something. And then maybe exploring, maybe it's just as simple as, natural breath in, natural breath out, and a natural pause. And just, you know, focusing on, I don't mean to like on the control of the breath, but the experience of the breath. There's a lot of mindfulness, I think, that can occur in that translation. But Angie, you nailed it. For people like you and me, and I don't want to speak for James, but I'll speak for you and me, since you outed yourself. My brain go 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 go, and for me to stop and breathe, it's all I can do to have some discipline to do that. I know I'm better off for it. I love the triangular breathing. I know I'm better for it, but to stop and do it. And then we travel with James, frequently. We're about to start up here in February, kicking it off in Vegas again for the year, like we did last year. But, it's that this man is like in a really good way, so regulated and disciplined and structured. And I'm joking. It's like he's a machine, but like part of his early morning practice, and late evening practice and midday practice is to stop and ground and to practice,
Mm.
his breathing and regulate. And it's just really interesting, because he's a go person too, and he's a GSD, getting shit done all the time. But I don't know, he's really worn off on me quite a bit. When we first met, I was starting my day at like 7 a.m., 6 a.m. And he's like, I don't start my workday till 10, man. I've got a lot of self-care to
Mhm.
do before that. And I'm like, oh wow. If James
Mhm.
can do that, I can figure that shit out too. So I appreciate that. I have some questions. A lot of, I mean, we'll see how they go. I don't want to take up all of our time. What for a little while, for a long while, Rachel and I had a brick and mortar, I would say integrated medical clinic. I don't know how else to say that. And if you can name a bell and whistle, we probably had it in there. We had so many providers, so many types of, therapies and modalities, and I mean, literally everything. Um, I didn't study with this person other than one session, I guess maybe is a way to say it. But we had a kid, his I don't know, he was a grad student, his girlfriend was a grad student, and he was a breathwork guy. Way before, again, I had ever met Shane and you guys. But he had a really interesting, I use that in a British term, technique, where basically it was very mandatory that you have to sit on the ground with your back supported, because you're probably going to pass out, get dizzy or something. And he would have you do these really basically deep breaths all the way in, all the way out, all the way in, all the way out. And there was no pause. It was not triangular. It wasn't even box breathing. It was literally almost like an oval shape or a circular shape. And I had a client of mine that introduced me to him, and she was like, you've got to have this guy come in and do this technique. It's changed my world, and this and that and the other thing. And I did a session with him. And for me, what I experienced was tingling in my lips. Like, I mean, my thing, like it was the weirdest feeling I've ever felt. I didn't pass out or anything, but I understood that if I would have kept going, I didn't know if it was going to be like, oh, that's a good thing, or oh, that's not a good thing. Do you have any idea what was going on with that breathing technique? And is that something to like, don't do that? Or it's like, no, we could explore that.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
So the technique, circular breathing as such, but forced, So
Yes.
essentially what you're doing is you're intentionally lowering CO2, hyperventilating,
Yeah.
right? That's why you're going to pass out, because you'll hyperventilate so much that the brain will knock you out so it can replenish the CO2. So we used to call a lot of the, like in circular breathwork sessions when we first started, we used to call them CO2 seizures, where some people would
That's what it
pass
felt
out.
like. No, that's
Yeah.
legit. Like it felt
Yeah.
like something bad was going on. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it
Yeah.
was. I'm just saying for me, it didn't feel not only not natural, but it felt dangerous,
Yeah.
and I was like, I can't have you in our clinic. Like we
Yeah.
can't,
That's a pretty good intuitive sense. So,
yeah.
because here, you think about it like this. Give somebody a psychedelic. One person will love it and think it's a transformational experience, and another person will be like, I hate that. I am never doing that again.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. This is when breath work backfires. Some people love getting off their face and some people hate it, right? So that's one thing. CO2 dropping, the symptoms were, think of it like this: oxygen restriction, tingling, right? Because it's all the vesicles are cinched up. So you'll have very well-known, renowned breathwork people saying that's just the oxygen flowing, when in fact it's actually the opposite. Yeah. So that's
we call like what I would call, as a provider, hypoxia. That's what the symptoms seem like, and that's hypoxia, right? So for people listening, hypoxia, low oxygen. Yeah,
there's benefits to intermittent hypoxia, yes, but if the body system is already in fight or flight, or is already what we call hypocapnic, if the body's already hypocapnic, it will have some severe symptoms, and then people will feel frightened by it, and they will never want to do a breathing technique again.
I think that's fascinating. Thank you for explaining that to me, because I understand it now. I think even when we had Shane on the show, I wouldn't have understood it like I did today. It took, my brain's slow sometimes, it took me to hear it like 5 or 6 times from you guys to hear this. Second question related, going back to this fight or flight response. When I was growing up, and I don't know if people still say this stuff, if you're really upset and you're in a stress situation, people would say, here's a paper bag, breathe into the paper bag, and you're going to calm down. And now I'm thinking it's because it's actually increasing CO2. Am I right about that? Oh my God, it makes sense now. I'm totally getting these things. So that old wives' tale of like breathe into a paper bag could be helpful to calm down a fight, flight, freeze response.
Yes, that's if you can't stop controlling your breath.
Wow.
If you can't stop controlling your breath, use a paper bag. Wow. But the thing is it's like, for me, okay, when I would go into like losing too much CO2, I would go into controlling it, because I have to get myself under control. I'm feeling out of control. I have to get under control. Yeah. And the hardest thing for me to do was to relax my belly. Actually, I found that this was a big, okay. So let me step back to, you had mentioned before about something that you can do. And you actually mentioned this framework without knowing that you were mentioning this framework. We call it the AIR framework, which is awareness, intervention, regulation. So you become aware of a situation. Do you need to intervene? Do you not need to intervene? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, and it's at your own call. And then the idea is you're getting to regulation, right? So when you're breathing into a paper bag, that's an intervention. If you can't do it yourself, use that to help you. Yes. But sometimes for me, if I feel that symptoms, I might just allow the breath to go rogue. I'll allow myself to hyperventilate. I'll just kind of lie down. I'll just kind of relax everything around the reflex and allow myself to hyperventilate. And I find that I just go, oh, okay. And then I'll sigh, and then I'll find I don't need to hyperventilate anymore. But the hardest thing is the mind, what it makes of the symptoms, how we react to the symptoms. And we think there's something wrong. So we think we have to do something about it. And, it's a bit of a dance with the system.
Angie, you're asking us all to be comfortable with our feelings and also discomfort. That's a big thing. Again, we
actually, no. I'm not asking you to get comfortable with your feelings, because getting comfortable with emotions is a complex thing. I'm asking you to get comfortable in your physiology.
Okay,
I'm asking you to get comfortable with the sensations in your body and to trust your body knows how to regulate itself.
I appreciate that.
I want to jump in. One topic's pretty taboo. One topic's pretty high velocity. Cool with that?
Cool. I'm game.
I can't wait to see where we're going.
High velocity first. Somebody gets the air knocked out of them.
Yep.
What's the best way to recover from that? Because I'm sure anybody that's ever played sports before has gotten the wind knocked out of them from like a blow or a fall or some type of collision.
Well,
talk us through that.
Back in the days of gymnastics, for me, that happened. And the fastest way, my gym coach, he's a 1984 gold champion gymnast. So like, I remember I fell, got the wind knocked out of me, kind of blacked out a little bit. And he came up to me and I was laying on my back and he raised my lower back. And what that did is it opened up stretched the diaphragm, and it reset the diaphragm and allowed the diaphragm to start again. So that was a physiological thing that he used to do that used to work really well. The thing about that is like, what reaction are you now going to have? So there's a little bit of a what you would call a trauma that has just happened in the body, and the body has remembered. So the next time you go to do the thing, so if you're in sport and you're doing a thing, and the last time you did the thing, you got the wind knocked out of you, and you go to do the thing again, you're getting back on the horse. What do you think the physiology is going to do? It's going to react before you go do it. It's going to have some fear before you go and do it. So it's probably going to seize up and it's going to stress out, and you're either going to muscle through it or you're going to stop doing it. So there's a behavioral aspect moving forward going, okay, so you had the wind knocked out of you, you recovered. Now you got to go do this thing again. How are you going to react to it? How's the physiology going to react to it? So this is where the reflexive breathing comes into play, because if you allow the whole system to relax and you allow the reflex to do what it needs to do, it will balance you out. And you'll have balanced body chemistry, because it's like, hey, no need to be scared here. This is what we're doing. Are you coming with me or not? It's like, you got to dance with your body. You got to work with your body. So, it'd be a bit of a process to go through.
I love that you bring us back to physiology, because the next one is the taboo, the orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that have a struggle having orgasms. Whether men or women. What's some advice for that group?
So I actually started reading this book on that. You can't actually orgasm if you don't have enough oxygen in the system, because the body won't allow you to. Because when you do orgasm, it sets off a lot of systems in the brain, and the recovery from it, it's like it's necessary to have a certain amount of oxygen to be able to recover for it. So your body won't even allow you to do it. It is a personal thing as well, because, especially when it comes to sexual things, anybody who's experienced sexual trauma, when it comes to experience in intimacy with somebody that you really know, you love and care about, it might be hard to work through that because of past traumatic experiences. The breath might seize up when it comes to, when you're addressed with an opportunity, you might seize up around it, or you might freeze up, and then you'll lower your CO2 and the oxygen can't flow, and therefore you cannot relax enough to be able to receive or to be able to get into state. So it is, again, self-regulation. If you're stressed, if you have a lion coming at you and you have to run, you're not going to lie down and have sex with someone, are you? So if your physiology is like about ready to run,
you don't know Jim well. That's all I'm going to say.
What'd you say?
You don't know James well.
Well, men are different than women. Men are born to procreate, so they can kind of do it whenever. But women, it's kind of like different. It's like
it's environment. It's environment. It's state
Correct.
of mind. It's
Correct.
safety.
Yes.
It's partner. There's a lot of different types of things that come involved to it. It's not just, howl at the moon and have the orgasm.
Correct. Or squeeze this or visualize that. It's just, it's if you're well regulated and balanced, you'll be in a more receptive state.
Yeah, I'm just really thankful that I got a chance to ask some deeper dive questions with you today on different topics that, typically aren't podcast fodder. And the machine breathing stuff, I think a lot of people are going to take away from that. And regulation for snoring and moving the body and getting stronger respiratory muscles, people are going to take away from that. And I also know that a lot of people probably got the air knocked out of them before, and that's going to be something that people can pull away from. And now talking about orgasms, it's all real topics that most people don't know how to bridge the conversation on. So thank you for being so helpful with so many different ways of self-regulating and bioadapting. And I think that not biohacking, but bioharmony is back to Jason.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for all of that. And I had no idea where you were going with the taboo subject. So and I love talking about sex all day long. Just ask my wife. I mean, it's true.
We're human, right?
Right. Exactly. And anyway, I'm gonna look at me. I'm editing right now. I'm doing a good job right now, because I know if I go too far with this, I'm going to get off the call and Rachel's going to be like, why did you have to say all of that? So I'm going to edit, but I do think it's interesting that, and again, I'm just throwing this out there. There's that idea. First of all, I'm going to take it more taboo, guys. There's that idea of some type of and I'm going to use a bad word here, but asphyxiation that's associated with orgasm, you know? And I mean, there's some like dangerous techniques that are out there. I mean, I don't even want to talk about that stuff and the stuff that's portrayed in porn that like, you know, I don't want to talk about abuse against women. This is a whole can of worms to get into, but I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about some simple things like it makes sense that when people are, you know, having an orgasm, some people hold their breath, like they'll just hold their breath. And I don't know why that would be, but now I didn't know, but now I understand that could be, and even some of those other things that we were just talking about might be related to that idea of increasing CO2 pressure and increasing oxygen into the tissues. And that drives an orgasm. That makes a lot of sense. And take that even further, there's this idea in French, en français, that it's, you know, I can barely speak English, let alone another language, but I think it's called la petite mort, the little death, right? And that's what they call orgasm, la petite mort. And it's the little death. And I'm thinking, oh, it's interesting because really what you need is a lack of oxygen. You need more CO2. And it's, you know, creates this euphoric state. And I think that's, you know, it's a very interesting idea to me. So thank you, James. I had no idea where you were going. But someday I'm going to just dive deeply into orgasm physiology. And I'll know more about that. So I appreciate that. I have another question that I think is also very practical. And it's something that I've been working on and been using in my practice. And I'd love to get your expert opinion because you know what? I just came across it and sort of like made a hybrid version of my own. And then now I've been using it, but I'd love to get the expert's opinion on this. Are you familiar? And I don't even know how to, again, I can barely speak English to pronounce this person's name. The Buteyko method of breathing.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So I've been using just for our listeners, and I'm going to have Angie develop this better, but the way I have taught it, maybe incorrectly, is you kind of breathe normally, but then it's that triangle breath, but on the exhale, it's a controlled pause that you hold out for as long as you can, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever that is. Some people it's 5 seconds when they start, right? But the reason I started implementing it was because I was looking for ways for again, my clientele is mostly women, autoimmunity, and I see a lot of mast cell. Mast cell activation syndrome, MCAS, histamine intolerance. I mean, those types of things, right? And I came across the Buteyko method, where there was actually research done showing that it lowered histamine, lowered mast cell activation, and kind of like a reset, if you will, for the immune system. And I found this to be a powerful reset for, I mean, and again, we got to get to the root causes of what's driving it all. This is for flare-ups, right? And I have them practice it too, you know, and all that. But I'm just jumping in. Am I way off here? Again, I've never spoken to anybody about this. This is all internal Bradleyisms. Tell me about the Buteyko method, what you know about inflammation, histamine, induction, MCAS, all that kind of stuff.
So the pros and cons. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Pros, where it's extraordinary is that it does raise CO2 levels, right? But where it becomes difficult is people struggle with higher levels of CO2 because they're not used to it. So it's painful. So the Buteyko method may be very uncomfortable and they might develop an aversion to it and they might not want to practice it because it's too difficult. It's uncomfortable and they don't, you know. But if you can do it, yes, it works. Essentially, what you're doing is you're raising CO2 levels and you're becoming comfortable with higher levels of CO2. And that's it. That is what we want. Yes. Now, the downside of it is it's still controlling your breathing.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea is that you want to raise CO2 levels naturally as well without control. I mean, it's a great fast method to like shortcut your way there, but it still does not help you when you're in a stressed out moment, confrontation with a partner or something like that, right? So what you want, that's where the reflexive breathing comes in because the body can get you there rather than you forcing it. So both are good, but it still doesn't address the behavioral aspect of it.
And I'm totally using that as a technique. I mean, I want to be clear. Like this is, I mean, I don't think it's natural for any, I mean, people always talk about natural medicine. I'm like, show me one animal that's inhaling, exhaling, and then not breathing for 20 to 40 seconds. Right. I mean, it's like, that's not real. And in fact, you know, and again, I use it, I try to teach that to my MCAS patients or clients as a technique to use during one of those histamine flares.
Yes.
So I
In the
mean,
moment, yes.
it's like almost like a therapeutic technique, but it's not a solution. It's not going to solve MCAS. That takes a lot more work, which is really coming back to the kind of the overarching story that you've given us is there's a lot of different breathing methods that are out there or techniques that are out there, but ultimately we need to get to the root causes of why aren't we breathing naturally, like that squirrel that's outside eating my bird food that I keep putting out every day. He's breathing normally. Why aren't we breathing, reflexively or normally or subconsciously? Why aren't we doing that? And I think that's brilliant and a lot to chew on for sure. I have we're coming down to the end of the show and I have other things. Can I have time for one more question,
Yes,
James?
of course.
I have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I have time for one more too?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So mine might be easy. Sort of going back to apnea. I talked about how I used to snore. I don't snore anymore. I used to not get any deep sleep or REM sleep, and now I get, plenty. And how do I know that? Because of my Aura Ring, right? Yeah. So it's good. I'm glad you already answered my question then. I love my Aura Ring. James and I are polar on this. He's an anti-device guy. I am a how many 5Gs can I get into my body at once? And I'm just joking, but I do like James, I still don't wear a watch because of you, and I'm not going to buy a battery operated car because I don't want my testicles to be fried. I mean, all this stuff, right? I get it, but I love my Aura Ring and I love the data that it gives me all the time. And it seems to be super accurate. Now, every single day, not every day, 90+% of the days that I wake up, you know how it has that, how'd you sleep? And then it talks about your breathing while you were sleeping. I used to get, and it's for those of you that don't have an Aura Ring, it measures things of like tiny little hiccups to like moderate hiccups to major hiccups. And I used to get moderate to major, and then I went minor to moderate, and then I went to minor only. And now it's very few and far between, but almost every night, like I was just looking like last night, I had like 4 minor breathing hiccups. While I don't know if that's the right word for it, but where it said, hey, your breathing was pretty good all night, but there were these 4 instances. And that might be an average night or maybe even a high night for me. And here's my question. Is it normal to have some hiccups when you're sleeping and again, I'm still working on it, or is this like, I see the improvement, but like, am I at the end of my improvement or can I expect to just keep getting better? Once in a while I have none. I will say that once in a blue moon, I have none.
I'm going to kind of blow your mind a little bit, right? Okay. Right. I hope.
You have many times today,
so
I'm ready for another
one. Your body knows how to breathe you better than you. It's your judgments of your breathing that causes the problem, right? Hiccups are, if it's unconscious, your body's doing it because it has to do it, because it needs it. And so we kind of have to think of it differently, going, that's my body regulating itself if I'm unconscious to it potentially, right? So it's not always a bad thing to see that. Now, here's where I'm going to kind of...
Can I clarify real fast?
Yeah.
Because I think what it's measuring is lack of breathing. I think it's am I right that it's measuring respirations?
I haven't looked into that. I always wondered that too. I haven't researched that because I always look at it going, that's just my body doing what it needs
now
to
I'm
do.
thinking what you just said. I mean, you already blew my mind with understanding it more, that it's almost like, here I am respirating, whatever. And then a few times at night, my body's like, you didn't respirate. Like you didn't take and then I'm wondering, oh, am I just increasing my CO2 level? I'm not waking up. It's not like I'm apneic and waking up and like, I'm unaware of any of this until I wake up in the morning. So precisely. I love the idea. Rachel always reminds me, the body always knows what to do.
If it's not a problem, it's not a problem, right?
Yep.
So, and the other thing is that people will have a look at, because you could be having a dream or something like that and your breathing is just reacting to whatever it is, right? But people think also like, it gives you a respiratory rate, and everybody, if you studied, physiology, the saying out there is that you need to be around 12 breaths per minute is probably the goal, right? But it's actually not. I have like completely blown that out of the water as far as belief of that's how it should be. Here's why. Because I put on a capnometer and I measure my CO2, right? The real measure of if your breathing rate is good for you or not good for you is how much CO2 you're able to retain, right? So I'm just going to show you a little graph here. I don't know if you can see it maybe. Anyway, this This is me breathing at 16 breaths per minute. Look at those breath waves, in, out, very little pause on the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
But see that line, the red line?
Mm-hmm.
That should be the baseline, 35 millimeters mercury, right? That's like healthy is above the line, not healthy is below the line. So you can see I'm doing 16 breaths per minute, and my body chemistry is well balanced, and I am well balanced, and I'm feeling good, and I am healthy, breathing 16 breaths per minute. That blew my mind. It finally gave me permission to allow my body to do what it needed to do
That's
without
super,
judgment.
yeah, that's super interesting. I have so much to unpack here. I'll go into my oh shoot, it doesn't matter. I was going to try to be really smart there, but I'll go into my man cave or whatever you want to call it. My mental space, and I'm going to unpack this because I've always interpreted it as those were times something was wrong, but now I'm thinking these are times my body's adapting.
Yeah.
And that my body knows what to do. And like you said, it's not a problem if it's not a problem.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that because it's a different perspective and a different lens. We were just talking to Dr. Denham Slade, and my makeup, my temperament is to look for patterns and then make the patterns better and just fix it and be efficient and like fix all the time, do better. But maybe the better part is my body knows how to adapt. And again, coming back to what we were talking about, that innate intelligence that's inside of me, that's part of that God source, that makes me the divine, being that I am, and the divine being that you are, and James and Rachel and everyone else. It just knows what to do. And maybe we don't need to think about it. So
it's just the awareness of it,
Yeah.
the awareness of, are you controlling or is it doing its thing?
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I know we're a little over time, so I know James has one more question here, and then we'll say our goodbyes. But James, go ahead.
Air quality. I travel to Mexico City often, and that place would be like the ultimate location in the world if they just got their air quality under control. I don't wear face masks, or as people call them, like face diapers, but I don't do that. What are some solutions for breathing and keeping my respiratory healthy as I'm in an environment that is really not healthy? That's I'm sure another takeaway moment for many people that are in environments that the air quality sucks, and they might actually live there. They might actually travel to there just intermittently. They might actually live there. Like, what are some good solutions?
Yeah, we had a friend who was living in Seoul that had the same issue. So, number one, your nose is a natural filter. So just making sure you're breathing through the nose. And making sure that they're just small, relaxed breaths. You don't have to take big breaths unless the physiology requires it, right? Like if you're exercising, and like when I say the chemistry requires it, like if you're exercising and you have to take bigger breaths, but just small breaths in and out through the nose, just being conscious of that is probably the first thing that I would mention. Your reaction to the air pollution is can trigger anxiety. So that's the behavioral side of things. So it just like the meaning that you make of the air quality and how you feel in the body, that can also think. Some people see chemtrails and they break out into anxiety, or they, if they're in a closed room, they have to open up the window, otherwise it gives them anxiety. Like these are behavioral things that are causing physiological issues. So again, is it, like I always look, is it mechanical, or is it behavioral? Right. So you want to make the difference between the two. You can control the behavioral issues, and sometimes you can manipulate the mechanics, right? Like if in this case, air quality, don't live in a place that you don't like to live, breathe the air, because you're not going to breathe very well. Over time, it's going to create these behavioral issues, right? Another thing is if it does kind of take over, like you have some respiratory issues, mucus buildup, because it's constantly trying to compensate for the amount of toxins that are coming in, or pathogens and that sort of a thing. It's just making sure your immune system is healthy to be able to fight that off. Don't go out drinking alcohol every night. That's going to make things so worse. Like that's just dumb, like having a look at what's going to keep your what's going to build up your immune system to be able to fight off of the pathogens as well. And this, I'm just saying this is what I would do. Right. And what has worked with some some of the people that we've worked with. And then the other part is, if it really does take over, there's this beautiful like recipe. These like Russian witches gave me this recipe. I don't know. They love making potions and stuff like that. Anyway, they gave me this idea where you put like a half a cup of say like a pink salt or like sea salt, Celtic sea salt into a bowl, and then you put some bicarb soda here, but I'm forgetting it in America all of a sudden.
Baking soda, is that what
Baking soda, yeah, you put
Yeah.
baking soda. Gosh, it's been a while. Baking soda, like a cup of baking soda, aluminum-free baking soda in there. And then you take like 3% hydrogen peroxide and put a capful in there and fill it with boiling water and put a towel over your head and breathe in the salts and the bicarbs and the hydrogen peroxide, and that'll cut through the mucus. It'll clean out the airways, literally, like the salt cuts through, the bicarb cleanses, the hydrogen peroxide cleanses. And whenever, like, it hardly ever happens, but whenever I get sinus issues or respiratory issues, that is a really good, fast way for me to be able to break things up faster to help the body along in its immune function.
I love that so much. And there's a lot of stuff there that I'm going to go back into the notebook and take some notes, because a lot of times when I hear brilliance, I say, we're going to share some ideas today that you probably are going to want to get your notebook out and take some notes on today. And at the end of the show today, I feel like everybody should go back and re-listen to this if you made it this far, and take some notes on some of these things that are meaningful to you on your journey in life. And everybody, I think that we touched on topics today. There's going to be so many takeaways for so many people, that from the extreme athlete to the mountaineer to the person that just wants to have better sex, or better quality of life quotient, not just box breathing or circle breathing or different things, but we talked about a lot of really poignant things that are really timely and not just a buzzy thing. So I think Jason, are you good on today's episode?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, I think toward the end there, Angie's like, I'm going to blow your mind. I'm like, sister, you blew my mind like 45 times on this episode, So, I mean, between you and Shane, I'm just like, always just like, I want more. And speaking of more, for our listeners, that was unplanned, but it's a great segue. People that are looking for our GBF Nation, go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com. We're going to have all the links to, connecting with Angie and Shane and, all the work that they're doing. And you're going to be in good hands. And then, man, that podcast is launching. I don't have my notes in front of me, but it's Breathe Well, Live Well. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That was from the cobwebby recesses in my brain. I went off my notes and I remembered it. I'm so proud of myself. But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. Go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com. Check out the show notes. For those of you that did keep notes, that's awesome. For those that didn't, we'll have transcripts on there as well. So check that stuff out. Check out their links. Visit with these guys. It'll change your life forever. I mean, shoot, Angie, you changed my life in 90 minutes. So, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like working, intimately with you and Shane. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for holding the land down under together for us. James, you're going there to speak soon. So, he'll get to venture to Australia before me, but I think it's just so exciting. Thank you again today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Shane too about altitude training and what I can do to optimize my performance on the mountains. But Angie, it's been absolutely transformational, as Jason was expressing there. And for our listeners, if you've been struggling with stress, anxiety, sleep issues, or just feeling out of balance, what Angie just shared could be the missing piece. Like I said, take some notes, damn it. This isn't about adding another complicated technique to your routine. It's about understanding why you breathe the way you do and learning how to allow your body's natural self-regulating system to do what it's designed to do. And maybe do the Russian witch potion and breathe under a towel and clean out your respiratory systems. But check out the link on the online breathing academy at podcast.com, as Dr. Jason has mentioned a couple times, as well as some free life-changing resources. Remember, as I always say, nobody is coming to save you, but solutions like this can prove you can save yourself. Angie, thank you again for being here today. And to you all, our Get Better Faster Nation, thank you for listening and for your continued support. The best way to show your support is share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get all the behind the scenes insights we've got coming along for you. We've got more incredible guests lined up that are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Thank you so much, Angie.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you, James.
Phenomenal
Thank you,
guest.
Jason.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
James.
Yes. And thanks for holding it down with me today, Dr. Jason. Until next time, keep getting better faster, guys.
That's right. Love y'all.
Bye for now.